My truest and bestest of friends and brothers, um, Brother Vic Radcliffe. I want to give the Lord a hand of praise for him. I'm honored always to be in his presence or to have him near me so that we can discuss some of the things about manhood that really are meaningful and necessary. Mm-hmm. One thing about Vic and I, in this installment, you'll see when we come together, we don't pull punches, we don't pretend. We pull the scales off of the flesh and we get down to the meat that's holding the bone together, and then we get down to the sinews and the ligaments and the tendons that's holding the bone, and we dig on in there.
We dig on in, yes,
and
sir.
we find safety because the Bible says in a multitude of counsel there's safety, and so like iron, we sharpen each other. Mm-hmm. And so today, I'm excited that my brother Vic Radcliffe is with us again, and in this installment, we're going to start off talking from the subject of managing me. Vic, would you please again introduce yourself just for a moment? Just tell us a little bit about yourself and let the audience know, something that brings Vic into this discussion.
Okay, once again, I'm Vic Radcliffe. I'm a resident. I am a son of this area here in Aiken County, or CSRA. I currently live with my family, my wife, my 2 children in Atlanta, Georgia. But we have been a part of the ministry here under Bishop Bush's teaching for a few years and remain even from a distance. So we've kept in touch. Bishop Bush here is a spiritual leader for my family, and so I'm glad to be here with him in his presence so that we can do the work that God has for the kingdom today.
You know, and you said spiritual leader. I think that's something that all of us need.
Definitely.
We're spirits, we have souls, we live in bodies. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we take for granted that because we're men, we need a spiritual assistance, mm-hmm. someone that can talk to our spirit.
Yes.
You know, how has that benefited you? What?
It's an everyday thing. Like I don't dare think that I can battle this world on my own. I don't have enough strength to do that. But I do know that I do have the Holy Spirit living in me, and I know that that Spirit is stronger than any force in this world, so I'm confident in that every day.
The word managing that we're going to be talking about starts with the word man. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot that needs to be managed in the man.
Oh, boy.
And sometimes the man thinks he's managing successfully, and then he discovers there's another side to himself that needs to be managed. Uh-huh. So that dilemma doesn't become the most frequent exchange that we encounter.
Right.
So in order to avoid constant dilemma, as a man, we have to learn how to manage the man.
It's an ongoing process. Like, I'm 47. But a year ago, I wasn't the same person then that I am now. Like, if you're looking for, if you are opening your heart to continual growth, then, and your objective each day is to grow and be a better version of yourself, first you got to look to God for that. First you need to be praying like constant. I'm not saying all times of the day. That's not where I'm not trying to go there and say I talk to God all day. I don't. And actually I need to talk to him a little bit more than I do. And sometimes I'm probably talking to him when I don't realize I'm talking to him, because I have a lot of conversations internally, which is my spirit man speaking. I've learned that. So I just know that this life that we live is a constant battleground, and we need to have our armor on every day. And without it, we're uncovered, we're unshielded, and there's spiritual attacks coming from everywhere. And if you're not careful, if you don't have the right perspective, you would think that it's personal attacks on you all the time. And so now you're mad at everybody, and now you feel like everybody's out to get you. But again, if you have the right perspective on what this life is about, then you understand that I need God. I can't depend on just me, because if it was just me, like I can't manage myself by myself, right? I know who Vic is in here, the Vic that can be, if I'm not suppressed by the spirit that lives in me.
Wow. So you said a lot. You talked about perspective. You talked about the challenges of the age. You talked about being properly prepared to respond spiritually, because Satan is always up to something. Mm-hmm. You've heard my saying, the devil always uses what works. The devil only uses what works. And if it ain't working, it ain't the devil. Mm-hmm. So he has studied us, Vic. He understands the nuance of manhood. He realizes what we look like as a foe. Mm-hmm. And that's why Paul studied him. Mm-hmm. Paul said, we're not unaware of his devices. We're very familiar. I've actually taken the time to learn how Satan works in my life. One of the things that a lot of men do not understand, and it offsets their perspective, is that the devil knows more about the stratagems or strategies necessary to keep you from being you, mm-hmm. than sometimes you know about yourself. And in many cases, because he has studied you so well, he knows exactly what to do, how to do it, who to use, and when to pull it off. Mm-hmm. And that's why, again, oftentimes we as men find ourselves without our best mind, our best frame of mind, because we're not always ready to face some of the challenges that come to us by way of spiritual warfare. Mm-hmm. You want to say something?
I do. Everybody would agree that the people who can potentially hurt you the most are the people who are the closest to you, your family. Yes, sir. People who you feel, I'm very offended now because you said what you said, or you're acting the way that you're acting, but the devil will use anybody. So we all need to know that. The devil will definitely use the people closest to you without them even knowing it. So the Bible also says that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. So if we can keep that perspective, then we can set that person apart from what they did to offend us. But I like how you used the word foe when you said we are the devil's foe. So I'm going to say this because I know people are watching this, the guys, maybe the gals, who know about football, knowing that, who have played, that if you're a defense or if you're an offense, you watch film on the other team because you want to beat them. You want to find out what their tendencies are, what they do to be successful, what you can do to take advantage of what they like to do. And so the devil has a game film on all of us. He has film on me.
There you go.
He knows where I can be tripped up. And he don't use new things. Like, he might start to have to use new things if I learn how to avoid those pitfalls.
That's good.
I don't want to be failing the same test. I don't mind taking tests, but I don't want to take the same tests that I was taking last year. So what I have to do also is I have to, as a offense, I have to know what my tendencies are also, and to know what the devil is trying to do to trip me up, so that I can suppress that Vic or that person that, if unbridled by the Holy Spirit,
yes, sir,
would be wild and not doing what he's supposed to do.
See, this is an interesting way to start the conversation today, because you're a coach, I'm a pastor, but we're both men. We're men first. It's interesting that while you were talking, the Spirit of God led me to the story of Job. And we were talking about Satan's familiarity with your masculinity and your identity, which in essence means that he knows a little bit about your purpose.
Yes.
Because he understands that the reason God made you like he did is to accomplish a certain thing regarding his will. Mm-hmm. So his job is to offset that. And to offset that, he has to go into the game room and study your film so he knows specifically what kind of stratagem or device will work in a very timely fashion to offset Vic's focus for this game. Here, one day, the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. And the Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Which in essence means, by the language implication, that not only was Job his focus, but where he came from was offsetting others. Because that's what he does. He's a 24/7 diabolical enemy. Satan answered the Lord, from roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it. Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job?" Now, God speaks out of his omniscience. So he knows exactly what the devil is thinking. There is no one on earth like him. He's blameless, upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Does Job fear God for nothing? There it is. Satan replied, "Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands so that his flocks and his herds are spread throughout the land. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." So the devil already has studied the film and decided that when he has this conversation with God, he knows what to say to God to get God to allow him to test you. The only thing he doesn't know is that by law, when God made you, or when he designed or created you, he made you with a certain capacity to respond to anything that would ever happen to you, so that no weapon formed against you would prosper. Isn't that something? And every tongue, that means every conversation that surfaces regarding you is already condemned in judgment. So God has already weighed your life in the balance and gave you the capacity to respond appropriately, to be in victory regardless to what the devil does. Now watch this, and I know you're getting ready to talk again, because watch this. He knows what to do. The Lord said, "Satan, very well then, everything he has is in your power." What? That's called the principle of allowance. But on the man himself, do not lay a finger. Then Satan went out from that's all he needed, went out from the presence of the Lord. And one day when Job's sons and daughters, so there it is, he uses the term, everything he has is in your power. One of the good things about you and I being here today is that the devil hasn't been able to go that far in our families. But he went for the jugular first. All of his sons, all of his daughters.
Yeah.
Which in essence means that with the devil, nothing is off limits. How do we read this or register this? The first people he's going to use are probably your sons and daughters, and then your spouse. Not to kill them, but in our case, to kill us.
Yeah.
What is he really after? He's after killing the kingdom from manifesting in its purpose.
Yeah.
So that we are distracted and disrupted from allowing whatever God has purposed through us to not manifest.
So I've already given what my age is. So by this point in my life, I know what my purpose is.
So,
without a doubt, I know what my purpose is.
Okay.
At the same time, the enemy knows what my purpose is also. So his job is to kill my purpose or distract me from,
steal and destroy.
Yeah, to distract me from doing that every day. And we'll use whoever, whatever, and we'll try to plant things in my head to make them my thoughts, to doubt what I'm doing, and to get me off. So that's why we got to pray every day. That's why we got to remember we have. I will continue to use the word perspective. If we have the right perspective, then we can see things for how they are and not some other distorted perception.
Well, let's camp out around the word perspective for a minute then. The perspective addresses two things. Warfare is positional, not personal.
Yes.
Right perspective is to see it from the perspective of righteousness so that you remember that it's positional. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities,
Yes.
spiritual rulers of the darkness in high places. It's positional because, again, we walk by faith, not by sight, which in essence means that our warfare has been elevated. We are spiritual, and the devil tries to keep us focused on the natural. Mm-hmm. When we focus on the natural, he says, aha, gotcha. Mm-hmm. But if we turn that thing into spiritual, we don't let him into our heart, and it makes it difficult for him to have the effectiveness and the impact that he otherwise would have.
Yes. Sometimes I find myself, because listen, I'm a husband. Uh-huh. I have children. My oldest daughter texted me this morning, going through something, and I'm thankful that I have the resources to help her in that area and not have to worry about what I'm going to do and how. You know, I would love to see her at a different place in her life, but that's where she is. So that's her walk, not mine. We each have our own cross to bear every day. Right. And if I can help, I'm not trying to carry someone else's cross, because if I get in the way, parents, if you get in the way of your children having to carry their own cross, then in my experience, God will take something out from you so that you can't get in the way of whatever he's trying to do in that kid's life. So we each have to carry our own cross each day, like over and over and over again, carry our own cross. But I am grateful. That's another thing that I know we're going to talk about is gratitude. Yeah. Our attitude towards life is not only just our perspective, but being able to be grateful for everything that we do have. Because I had a conversation with a kid, 2 kids, Bishop, and that's why I say I know what my purpose is, because just like the enemy comes in like a flood from time to time, so does me having to work in my purpose. Like, I can get 10 text messages from 10 different individuals who are dealing with the same type of stuff. Like, I can really copy and paste what I said to that person and send the same thing to the other person. They take it in differently, but it helps their lives in the same or in different ways, however it fits them. So I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to do that. I'm grateful that the Lord trusts me. So that's why the enemy can't lie to me and tell me what I ain't, what I can't do, because God continues to send people my way that I got to help, that he gives me the strength to help, gives me the resources to help. So my perspective is locked into. Nope. I'm not saying the devil doesn't still talk and still do things, but what I am locked into is what my purpose is. I've prayed for God to bless me so that I can bless others. So my daughter, my youngest, she is very, very spiritually in tune, and as a result, the enemy attacks her often. Comes at her to make her think that she's less than and she can't do this, she can't do that. Sorry, Bishop, I'm putting your business out there, but this is, somebody's going to grow, okay? But the devil comes after you, Bishop.
All the time. Nonstop.
Because of what you do, because of your line of work. It ain't work, but it's because of your line of work that you get attacked all the time also.
All the time.
So when we're trying to promote the kingdom and we're trying to do God's work, the enemy sends his forces in to try to shake that up, to try to discredit us Christian pushers, you know. Yes, and so we have to maintain the line and trust that God has our back. We put that armor on every day. I know I'm all over the place with my talking.
Oh, you're good.
But all of this stuff is true. Like, this is real stuff. I understand that, because some young people think that if I choose to follow Christ, then life is all of a sudden going to be easy for me. And no, it's not. I'm going back to carrying my cross. It's not easy to carry that cross. That cross is tough. Go ahead.
Life is life regardless to whether you...
Life is life.
Whether you serve the Lord or not. I watch people who stray from God or run away from God because they think life is either going to be more difficult or more sweeter. Life is life. Life is going to be life. How you interpret life determines how you respond to life. And how you respond to life determines whether you live as an overcomer or not. So it's right to have the right perspective. And a lot of these things that, by way of challenges that happen to us, we have to ground them in our under godliness through the context of faith, so that we understand that our victory is through faith. This is the victory that overcomes the world, even our faith. Now, the thing that we're even dealing with now, the nuance of manhood, managing me. You got, from what you've identified, we've got family conflict, we've got relational conflict, we've got occupational conflict, then we've got the demand of others upon ourselves because of coach and pastor. So there's a need to be prepared to respond appropriately. And you said something about the text messages. Sometimes I can have in a day as many as from 76 to 126 or 130 or 150 texts to respond to. And one message from devotion literally can appropriately address whatever they all need. And sometimes half of those will respond back and say, my God, a word on time. Well, the reality is that's why we pray, that's why we're in devotion, and that's why we listen to God. Oftentimes, the way the Spirit ministers to us is not for us, it's for those who are looking to us. And that's why I identified you as a coach. But you're a spiritual man, not just a coach. And when I say not just a coach, I don't mean coaches aren't spiritual.
Right.
Because they handle the calamity of life regarding other people. To balance people and to juggle life, here we go now, we have to be able to manage ourselves.
Yes.
And sometimes managing ourselves is not the easiest thing to do. Because somewhere between my time, my money, my relationships, my faith, and all the other critical aspects of being me, sometimes they're not trying to intersect favorably. And if I don't manage them successfully, I will live in turmoil today.
Yes. Yeah, I'm following you, Bishop, because like, let's just say I'm leaving the school.
Okay.
And then I get in my truck, and I got 45 minutes in the car by myself before I get to the house, because when I get to the house, now I'm on again, right? Like I'm me in the car. I'm at work, or I'm living in my purpose at this place that I go to, and then I get in my truck, and then I can choose to turn on my gospel. I could choose to listen to this word I want to listen to. I could choose to be in my own thoughts, which is necessary. You need to be able to be in touch with your own spirit from time to time as well, not just in the morning when you get up, not just when you go to bed at night, but sometimes you just need time to process. So then on the ride home, I'm me in the car by myself. So if you can tune out everything that happened in the day. So there's a transition period before I go. There's a transition period. I gotta renew before I go in this house. And I'm not trying to sound like going in this house is another battleground, which it can be. It is a battleground because the enemy is there trying to trip you up when you get there also, because some little thing, if you ain't protected, if you don't have the right perspective, will set you off, and and now you're out of character again with the people who love you and need you the most.
Right.
So managing me takes a lot of work. That's a 24/7 occupation also.
So let's go. I wrote this years ago. Listen at this and respond to it, because you just transitioned from the field to the house. And I was examining what happened in the garden with Adam and Eve and Lucifer and how he was able to influence them. So here's what I wrote. And out of the ground the Lord formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them. And whatever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. The question I ask is, now, did Adam, he was successful in the field. Did the adversary follow Adam home, or did Adam take Eve to the field? What makes this a palatable question is the fact that during this period, man was actually in the glory of God, which makes the amount of time Adam and Eve dwelled in the garden incalculable and indeterminate. Regardless of how Lucifer, through the serpent, gained access to Eve, several factors are clear. Here we go. Your enemy, number one, will do anything to gain the advantage. Mm-hmm. So Eve is a resourceful, valuable consideration for Lucifer. Yes. Number one. Number two, a man must transition from the attitude of the field, whenever he's at home, because failure to do so may breed competition and strategic conflict. I refer to this as the residue of warfare. Keep in mind, a woman will perpetuate, preserve, or make undesirable what a man initiates. This is because man is a farmer, woman is the field. The word is the seed, the heart is the ground. Whatever a man sows, that shall he also reap. Since your attitude and your words convey your spirit, what kind of trees are you, brothers, planting at home? Mm-hmm. The tree of life or the tree of knowledge of good and evil? So when you go home, if you don't service your spirit before you enter, you might be planting what's undesirable. Mm-hmm. Keep in mind, what I said here is whatever you plant in that woman's heart, yep, whether desirable or undesirable, is what you will harvest. Yes. Now, this makes us more proactive about manhood than reactive, because we sometimes invite the mentality that the house ought to already be what we need when we walk in it. Hold on, Bishop, because I need to say this. You know it's true, what I'm about to say. The seed that I plant when I get there could be great. It could be the best seed and potentially produce the greatest harvest ever. But it all depends on what kind of water you use after that seed is planted. Okay. On what is actually going to be reaped at the end. Because you can plant a great seed, but something happened over dinner or during that game that y'all were watching, or some conversation that you were having that changed that seed into something else, and it produces a different thing by the end of the night. Wow. So let's go back to this question then. Did the adversary follow Adam home, or did Adam take Eve to the field? In other words, did he allow himself to take her mentality to where he was working? Right. And start becoming a part of the conflict? Because on the job, in the field, he has to compete. Yep. He has to contend. He has to subdue. He has to overcome. Did he take her into that reality, or did that reality follow him home? Because women are reflectors by nature. Whatever we are internally, they reflect externally. Did you know that if a man is frustrated inside, his woman will respond out of the frustration that he's harvesting inside of himself? Okay. He will not take credit for it, but it will become the responsiveness of his environment. And as a result of that, it will be very, very difficult to challenge the forces that are constantly frequenting for advancement, because neither of them now will take responsibility for the spirit that's running rapid in their communication.
All right, so let me answer your question then.
Yes, sir.
We mess around and we bring Satan home.
Okay.
We brought the snake home with us. And I'm saying that because I'm going to give you an example. Just yesterday, we had a baseball game, and we were the better team, and we lost. And we didn't lose by a lot, but we gave up. We gave a lot of runs away, and just because we didn't execute. Kids weren't, didn't do what they're supposed to do. So I'm frustrated. At the same time, I'm having a conversation with them, trying to make light that, hey, guys, we're going to work on this and we're going to get better and stuff like that. But I'm frustrated with them because I know the type of mentality it takes for them to be successful, the kind of ambition they need to have, the work that they need to put in so that you can get over these hurdles, right? So I'm frustrated with that. Now, in the meantime, again, I'm in the truck managing myself before I get home. So I'm thinking that before I get there, I've put all this aside before I walk in the house, how I feel about the whole thing. But I believe that I'm thinking I'm over it. I'm thinking I'm past it.
Uh-huh.
But I believe I brought a little frustration. I brought the field home. I didn't mean to say I brought Satan in the house. I brought the field home.
I understand.
When I came home yesterday.
You brought the mentality of the field.
Yes.
Which is the influence of Satan. He does all of his stuff in us without our knowing.
Yeah.
Because if we're not taught, we don't understand psychological registry, the importance of monitoring ourselves as we transition to make sure that we have shift gears. One of the things that the car does for us that we don't always do for our lives is, if it's a straight shift, a hill will demand conscious transitioning.
Yep.
A valley will demand a different type of shifting.
Mm-hmm.
A playing field will demand a different type of shift.
Mm-hmm.
Obstacles in your way will demand a different type. All of these are conscious registry. But when it comes down to Life 101, transitioning from the field to home, we don't always make the transition psychologically, which means that we're not appropriate spiritually. And when we're not appropriate spiritually, the devil can exploit everything that's unexplainable. So we don't consciously carry ourselves in the right frame of mind. And we're just talking about the man's part. That doesn't mean the woman isn't responsible. Mm-hmm. She's your equal. Yep. She's responsible for harvesting the right mentality as well. A mentality of consideration, etc. Those things are very, very important. But at the same time, we've got to be conscious of where we're going. Watch this. Understanding of who we're going to be engaging, and appropriate for the shifts that we may need to make in order to succeed. And sometimes the fact of the matter is we just aren't willing to do it.
So you ready for me to put you on the spot?
I'm ready for you to put me on the spot, sir.
So how do we make the transition? How do we make that happen, Bishop?
How do we make that happen?
How do we not bring the field
home?
Let's
go back to the car. Think about it like this. One of the things I commonly say in my message is that we live in a land of familiarity. Everybody that's frequent in your life, you know them. You know them quite well. You know what they like. You know what they don't like. You pick up their spirit. You pick up a lot of their solical responses. And you're familiar with their natural behaviors. Mm-hmm. You already have developed within yourself a comfort, a level of comfort and discomfort regarding the things you know about them, likes, dislikes, etc. So when you're going home from the field, take a moment to consider the environment that you're entering. What did you leave? How was it when you left? What mentality may be the offspring of the residue of what was not fully finalized before you left? Now, this is a lot to consider. This is why we're not perfect.
Yep.
But now you want me to walk you through it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you consider how you left, under what terms, then you consider the individual that you're going to be encountering, or the individuals that's in the environment, and how they may be in posture when you enter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you have any conversation with them prior to coming home?
Right.
Were things great when you left?
Mm-hmm.
You have this acquired familiarity that sometimes we fail to register, and we go in expecting for the person to be different, as if we forgot who they were.
Mm-hmm.
When I pay attention to who that individual is, I remind myself of what I should not say, maybe what I can wait to deal with later. And then I also question myself about what's appropriate for now. Don't always get it right.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, let's say it like this, for the sake of those who are with us. Probably 6 times out of 10 you won't.
Mm.
Now, because we are humans, we just ain't perfect, and we're not all knowing. And the other person, like you said, or the other people have something else to say about it. So the first thing God gives us is the ability to adapt. Once we get there and we say, oh man, I missed it altogether. I did the wrong assessment. The way I assess things to be just aren't close to it.
Yeah.
So I said the wrong thing. I acted the wrong way. Because you can actually be prepared and walk in and a word is said, or a phone rings, or someone shows up and something happens that wasn't anticipated, and it changes the landscape totally.
Mm-hmm.
So now, what do I do, Bishop? Be swift to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do we take hearing into a relational exchange? Pay attention until you know you are close to accurate in your assessment about what's going on in the environment. Swift to hear. Slow to speak. Don't address it until your knowing affords you the privilege of P-E-A-C-E. One of the things about the truisms of peace is that whenever peace speaks, you can open your mouth, because peace is telling you that things are ready to be addressed, because peace also says, I've given you the ammunition, or I've given you information, or I've given you the intellect, or I've given you the communication, or I've given you the right posture. I've given you what's necessary to make the environment better, okay, or to be appropriate in the environment. Swift to hear, slow to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and above that, slow to act.
Mm-hmm.
To act, slow to rap. Don't judge things swiftly. Stay in faith. Here's the difficulty in the exchange. Slow to rap. You ever notice it says slow to rap? Swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to rap. Why slow to rap? Rap comes after anger. Anger comes after the frustration and the depreciation and the aggravation and all that set in.
Mm-hmm.
Why slow to rap? Because when we don't allow ourselves to pay attention to the environment enough to absorb and register effectively what's going on in it, we're right where the devil wants us, because we're going to talk before it's time.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk before it's time, all the devil needs is for one of us to talk out of turn, and it goes.
Yeah.
Now it can become the accuser's ally or accuser's alloy because he uses both of us or all of us to make the exchange worse. Wrath now means that we've passed judgment on each other. And that's when the words just start getting slung. Now conversation is a vice instead of advisement.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, you with me? Mm-hmm. It's a sword.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather than something that gives us swift relief. Mm-hmm. And so he tries to tell us, Vic, to be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to act. Just because they said it don't mean it requires a response. Mm-hmm. Why are they saying it? Mm-hmm. Where's that coming from? You can actually be tired of hearing that. You can actually think that you've had enough of that. You can feel like you've had enough of that. You can feel that you're above that, but it don't change that.
Right.
The question that's most palatable for the moment is, why is that the issue? The second question is that something I can change? Mm-hmm. A lot of those things we just simply have to cast to God and allow him to learn us how to respond more appropriately so that we can harvest peace in the environment.
Okay.
So peace is not easily retrieved sometimes. It comes through the corridors of contention. Yeah. And we have to literally try to state principle, but principle doesn't even work all the time. It's just that the nuance of relationship is very offensive sometimes because it's defensive sometimes.
Yes.
And the fact that man and woman are trying to share the same space is not always the easiest thing to do. So there's a lot to learn about our differences, about our similarities, etc. So
you know that this time that we spend together is like, it can be considered a counseling session for me. I know that we're having good conversation, but and I hope this is candid conversation that people can learn things from, because so let's talk about we're talking about managing ourselves individually.
Yes.
So all the while I'm managing me, I just said this to my wife the other day. I was like, I got all these people that I'm trying to help or trying to be whatever I am for them. Yet, I'm trying to fix myself at the same time. But it's almost like God is like, let me handle you. I got you. Yeah. Do what I'm having you to do. Continue doing what I'm having you to do. I got all that. I know that you're still dealing with that. I know you're trying to figure out forgiveness. I know you're trying to figure out pain or whatever it is that you need to get yourself over that's back here, that ain't got nothing to do with what's going on today. Mm-hmm. We ain't supposed to be looking in our rearview mirror anyway, right? Mm-hmm. I want to go forward. I do want to go forward. There's some things that come up from time to time that pull at me, that the enemy uses to try to pull me or to slow me down. Again, we could circle. See how we just circle all the way back to the enemy tries to distract you from what your purpose is by bringing up stuff that you don't want to be, that don't even matter today, that should not be affecting who you are today. So the whole thought process of managing me is a great topic to talk about, because we have ourselves that we have to deal with all while, because it doesn't go anywhere, all while we're still trying to fulfill our purpose in the kingdom each day.
Vic, years ago, probably when I was in my late 20s, I started this quest for getting control of me, taking me under the auspices of godliness and allowing him to help me become a better me, a more refined me. It wasn't easy. I learned so much when you go into the closet to study you you come out saying, I don't have time to judge nobody else. Because the first reality you face is how many challenges you're facing being you. Sometimes the average male doesn't know the extremity nor the elaborate nature or the expansiveness of his challenges because he's never looked in the mirror to see who he was. When I looked in that mirror, I realized finance needed some real help. I did a Romans 7 job on myself. Paul said, man, when I would do good, evil is present with me. That I would, I do not. What I would not, that I do. I just, oh, wretched man that I am, who gonna help me with this? And I was saved. I was saved and struggling as a man. And so I would constantly pray, and I'm like, God, you're not helping me. I mean, you're not helping me with me. I would sit down in a session like this. I've been counseling since I was in my late teens, early 20s. I became a professional counselor in my mid-20s, and I started counseling abuse, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, anger management, all kind of stuff. I started, but anyway, I was affected with them, but I wasn't affected with him. And so I sat down one day, and I told the Lord, I said, if I can't get control of me, I'm going to quit.
Yeah.
It seems like every time I say something like that to God, he says, okay, all right, let's go, let's ride. First thing I started encountering there, I started journaling, I would write down, I found out my time needed an assignment. Man, my time was all over the place.
Yeah.
So what my spouse and my children would say to me sometimes about the way I use my time was true. Even though some of the things they said were a little extreme because they didn't just want me to manage, be a better time manager. They wanted more time than what was necessary too. But still, I needed to find me in that. So the Lord gave me this way of managing my time. Then I realized that my money needed a mission. And I'm like, man, my money's all over the place. I was spending it on everything but what corresponded with my essence and my purpose.
Yeah.
And boy, he took me into some places there that helped me to understand why discipline is necessary. Then I learned, I mean, it was layers. My relationships needed defining. Okay, you can actually spend all of your life with the wrong people thinking that you're fulfilling your purpose.
Yeah.
And miss God altogether. And so I had to sit down and prioritize who was most important, starting with my wife and God, my wife, etc.
Right.
It's a lot of times we don't deal with this religiously like we should, but in the Bible, it does not say God is first when you get married. The Bible literally, God says, I'm second because you married to your wife. Husband, love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. When he visited Adam in the garden, the first revelation that was uttered was, for this cause shall a man leave his father and his mother and cleave unto himself a wife, and they two shall be one flesh. Leave and cleave. Wait a minute. The only father Adam had was
God.
And so if God was his father and Eve was his wife,
He had to leave God.
He had to leave God and cleave to
his wife.
Eve.
Yeah.
So then that means to give his life for her, if she eats the tree, the fruit from the tree, he has to eat also. So that answers the question. Adam fulfilled divine purpose by eating what his wife ate because...
Even though it went against.
What did it go against? It didn't go against the principle. The second principle was a man shall leave his father and his mother and cleave. To cleave means to become one with her.
Right.
When we see what Jesus did, he gave up his life for his wife.
Yeah.
We were sinners. While we were yet sinners, he died for us.
Yeah.
So while Eve was a sinner, Adam died for her. We don't discuss that religiously.
Right.
So
I never even thought thought about it from that perspective. but
Right,
That's
because
correct.
we hear it religiously and we don't interpret it from the kingdom perspective.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
You're good.
Because
Spiritually.
because it's like, all right, so
Yeah.
from my perspective then, which probably from most people's perspective
This
sitting
is
in the
gonna be
pews,
good. Yes, sir.
you're like, okay, so why in the world did Adam eat that apple when he knew that that God told him he wasn't supposed to eat that apple?
But then the next thing God told him to do was leave his father and his mother and cleave unto himself a wife and become one flesh. And Jesus came, out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, a word is established. In principle, Jesus now has to show us what Adam did. And so Jesus, while we were yet sinners, he dies for us, the Bible says. Scarcely will a man die, a good man, a man die for a righteous man, and hardly does a man die for his friend. But I mean, come on. Jesus, he died, he gave his life for us while we were sinners.
Yes.
And then he tells the husbandman in Ephesians, husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church and, gave himself for it. That he might. All these things that he might do can only be accomplished if he gives up his life for his wife. So the reason why Paul said, I'm not doing that, in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, he said, because that's going to become a distraction from my purpose.
Yeah.
He said that marriage, not the woman, the marriage itself becomes the greatest distraction. Marriage in and of itself is a great distraction to us because now we want to be Adam before Eve, so that everything God brings before us, we do it in exactitude. Whatever he brought before him, he called it exactly what God would have called it, because he imagined things the way God imagined them. Now all of a sudden he has a dualistic nature. He has a woman there to befriend him, and now he has to take those concerns and share them with her in order for them to come out with one objective. Watch this. How do we give birth to nature? Man plus woman equals baby. What we are supposed to do after marriage is take our initiatives and bring them to our spouse and intercourse them so they generate a third alternative that neither one of us
Could have produced by
could
ourselves.
produce by ourselves. Phew. That's not what we do.
Yeah.
The society, the social stratum has taught us to be such head, I'm the head,
Me.
that you do what I said and not that instead.
Yeah.
You got it? And the woman is saying, where do I fit? Well, realistically, where God put you. And God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion, not him. It's shared. It was always shared, a shared commodity. And when we exchange it appropriately, we experience it in abundance.
Bishop, the whole time you were talking, you probably saw my face morph
This is
through
good.
all kinds of thoughts.
I love it.
So I'm like, why would Adam sit right there while Eve has a full-on conversation with that snake over there? And then listen to that snake convince her that she needs to eat of that tree that the Lord told me that we're not supposed to.
This is so good.
But then when she eats that tree, she reaches, she plucks, she bites, and then I just do it too. I know this wrong, but I do it anyway.
Now, there is the quest for Manage Me, part 2. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to end here, take a brief break, and dive into Managing Me as a Man, part 2.